Northland Vapor Company Moorhead LLC, Northland Vapor Company Bemidji LLC, and Wonky Confections LLC for allegedly violating Minnesota's edible cannabinoids law. Minnesota law is clear. An edible cannabinoid product sold in Minnesota must not contain more than 5 milligrams of THC per serving or more than 50 milligrams of THC per package. Furthermore, these products must not resemble or contain cartoon-like characteristics of a real or fictional person, animal, or fruit that appeals to children. During a recent joint investigation with the FDA, our investigation found edible gummies called Death by Gummy Bears containing 100 milligrams of THC per serving and as much as 2,500 milligrams of THC per package. To put that into context, that is 50 times the amount allowed under Minnesota law. Death by Gummy Bears far exceed the legal limits of THC and resemble gummy bear candies mainly consumed by and marketed to children. So to protect the public, the Board of Pharmacy embargoed this non-compliant product and is seeking an order from the court to have it destroyed. It is estimated the retail value of these embargoed products exceeds $7 million. We're also asking the court to prevent these businesses from manufacturing and selling edible cannabinoid products that violate state law. The board was originally made aware of these products by the FDA through our complaint process. One complaint involved a death. However, that death did not occur in Minnesota, and the FDA has not determined that the products caused the death. However, we are also aware of 5 teenage students in Des Moines, Iowa that experienced significant adverse events after consuming anywhere from 1/2 to 2 full Death by Gummy Bears. Their symptoms involved nausea and vomiting, severe anxiety and paranoia, severe tremors, increased heart rate, and difficulty breathing. According to the report, the 2 students that consumed 2 full gummy bears were taken to the emergency room. So to our fellow Minnesotans, we encourage you to be cautious when purchasing and consuming edible cannabinoid products. Only products containing 5 milligrams or less per serving and 50 milligrams or less per package are allowed to be legally sold in Minnesota. This group of companies far exceeded those limits and did so in a type of product historically marketed to children. If you or someone in your care has serious side effects from these products, call 911 or your local poison control center and get emergency medical help right away. These products should be kept out of the reach of children and pets, and THC products exceeding the legal limits may be extremely potent, making unintentional consumption and consumption by children especially dangerous. If a child consumes these products, seek care immediately and do not wait for symptoms to appear, as these products can affect children differently than they do adults. And with that, I would like to invite our Assistant Attorney General, Hans Anderson, to provide a statement.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Good afternoon. My name is Hans Anderson. I'm an Assistant Attorney General. I serve as the board's legal counsel. As such, I oversaw the investigation and embargo of these non-compliant products and will be leading the prosecution of this case. Attorney General Ellison has encouraged us to lean in to representing our state boards and agencies, and that is exactly what we are doing here today. We would like to thank the board, the FDA, and all others for their partnership and shared leadership throughout this investigation. We take this conduct seriously, and we look forward to continuing our work together to protect Minnesotans by holding bad actors accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. And we are prepared to take just a few questions. So when called upon, if you could please introduce yourself, provide your name and the organization that you are with.
Hi,
Yes.
Tom over with KSTP Television. Is part of the problem here the fact that the legislature put so few regulations in this law? I know they did regulate the amount of THC, but there's so few other regulations with it. Did it kind of make this a little bit of the Wild West for some of these manufacturers who thought, well, nobody's really looking because there are so few regulations?
Yes, absolutely. And it is our hope in the next legislative session that we pass much more comprehensive legislation surrounding these products. That's exactly the problem. We're limited with what we can do. These are not licensees of ours. And so it's difficult to track them, and any type of regulation enforcement, we're limited in terms of our enforcement tools as well. And as I've mentioned before, we weren't given additional funding and resources. So we do the best we can with the resources that we have to act promptly and effectively to address these complaints with the resources we have and the authority that we've been given under Section 151.7.2.
And licensing is not required?
Licensing is not required, not yet, but that's definitely a need. We need licensing, we need taxation, better regulation and enforcement. And the board went on record last March as supporting the establishment of a cannabis management office or some sort of cannabis board that would oversee all aspects of this industry, because right now it's very much lacking.
Can I just follow up on that real quick?
Yeah.
You said that there's no licensing available, so do you know where these products are being sold right now?
Through our complaint process is how we're notified.
So you're not sure, I mean, these could be sold anywhere in the state, and you don't have any record of that?
That's true.
How many complaints has the board received for non-compliant products so far?
We have received a total of 46 complaints. We received our first complaint in early August. So over the past 4 months, we received 46 complaints related to these edible cannabinoid products. And to put that into context, the board receives, investigates, and resolves on average 120 complaints a year related to our licensees. So over the past 4 months, with the addition of these complaints, our workload related to investigations has more than doubled.
Yeah, what made you decide to go after these retailers when there is evidence that there's quite a bit of non-compliant product out there at smoke shops, whatever it might be? I've seen like a 200 milligram Delta 8 and just 4 out of 5 shops I went to a couple months ago, so I'm just curious.
You know, but based on the complaints that we have, the first approach, again, depending upon the situation, this was unique. Well, death by gummy bears was unique in a partnership with the FDA. Typically, we receive a complaint and our investigators will go out, speak with that business and try to resolve that complaint through a warning and education. And some have been wanting to work with us to come into compliance, but those that don't, we will exercise our embargo authority when and if needed.
But Doctor, how many people do you have who are in this area specifically to do the work that you just described?
Okay.
And what will you all make a recommendation to the legislature as to what you think should be done going forward on regulatory? I presume you don't go to civil suits when you have a licensed pharmacy violating the rules. You have other enforcement measures.
Yeah,
Yep, sorry.
As Dr. Phillips said, we went on record before 151.72 was enacted to have a state agency with full regulatory authority to tax, license, discipline, and enforce these laws. And that's our position today, and we hope to convince the legislature when they look at this issue, and I understand it's a priority for a number of different parties, that they will take that recommendation into consideration.
In other words, you don't want this line of work as a pharmacy board function. You think there should be a separate agency?
We do. This is, we do pharmacies and pharmacists and related entities, and getting involved with legalized marijuana is another whole ballgame. As you probably know, a number of other states have addressed these issues, and they set up state boards that are fully funded and supported, and we hope that happens here in Minnesota.
John Drummond from Care TV. Quick question on the lab work here. Did you submit these to labs, and what is the prospect of getting our own lab?
Well, we're working with that. The two instances that you have information 4 from the FDA. I think those are going into FDA labs. We don't have the resources, we don't have the capability at all with the Board of Pharmacy to do testing. We're in negotiation with, I think, one of the labs in Minnesota that does that for the Department of Health with medical marijuana. And so we're trying to get that capability, but that's another area where we need more resources. And again, that's something we hope that this new state agency will have the capabilities to handle.
Given the, Theo Keith from Channel 9, given the shortcomings in your all's ability to investigate and enforce, who started this investigation? Is it you elevating it to the FDA, or is it the FDA?
Dr. Phillips can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we got a notification from the FDA, and we cooperated with them and had our investigation up. Was it November 8th when we first went up? We discovered the product and we embargoed it as soon as we found out what was being sold up there.
I'll check with NPR. Is it Dr. Patterson? Could you talk a little bit about your interaction with the company, what the company officials have told you, and then obviously what your follow-up was?
Based on the fact that it's an open investigation that we're still working on at this point, I'm not really at liberty to say much more than what's in the public filing.
Or what was in the public filing essentially is what?
I'm sorry, Tom.
I was just trying to get a better sense of what was in the public filing in terms of interaction with the company.
You're talking about the complaint?
Yes.
I think you should have a copy of that.
Can you speak at all to the circumstances of the one out-of-state death? Do you know if they were driving under the influence at the time, or any sort of mix of factors, or no?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that either. That the FDA that's still an open investigation with the FDA. So.
Do you feel that the link between these products and the high schoolers who were sickened, is that a more definitive link than the death at this point?
I believe that is true, based on the report.
This event started a little early for those of us who came
Yes,
at 1.
please.
Could you explain why this is being filed in Clay County? What's the connection to Moorhead? What's that all about?
That's where the 3 companies are located and where they're doing business. So that's where the board has jurisdiction to file a civil lawsuit.
I'm Susie Jones with WCCO Radio. I was a little late also. Could one person just tell me what the suit is alleging, who you're suing? I realize you'll be repeating yourself. I apologize for that. Stay and spell your first and last name and come to the front. And
Why don't we have our Attorney General's office representative
whoever
give you the
you want.
details?
Yeah.
That's who we want.
Okay.
Certainly, Hans Anderson, I'm an Assistant Attorney General.
Hans.
Yes, it's spelled H-A-N-S, and then Anderson with an O-N. We've filed a lawsuit against 3 companies that appear to be related for manufacturing and selling edible cannabinoid products that were out of compliance with Minnesota law. We conducted a site visit and embargoed I think over 100,000, I'm not sure the exact number, packages of these non-compliant products. The next step is to seek an order from the court to have the product condemned and destroyed.
And you mentioned somebody was sick, and how that came to be.
We received a report from the FDA. At this point, I'm not at liberty to disclose any further details about that.
In layman's
False
terms,
sickness.
Correct.
in layman's terms, can you explain what an embargo is for the Board of Pharmacy and how it works?
Certainly. An embargo is a seizure of non-compliant product. So our surveyor, Dr. Patterson, went in to their manufacturing warehouse with a representative from the FDA and found non-compliant product. The board has authority to embargo that product. As such, Dr. Patterson placed embargo stickers on the product, which means that it's now seized by the Board of Pharmacy, and we're seeking to have it destroyed.
How do you destroy $7 million of illegal cannabis products?
Well, you seek an order from the district court.
Physically, though, how do you get rid of it? Do you melt it? Do you burn it?
I'm not at liberty to discuss. We've destroyed product before, but I'm not familiar with the process.
Mr. Anderson, just real quick, actions you took, could you take any action beyond that in terms of penalties or enforcement at all, or is this as far as you can go down the line?
At this point, I'm not at liberty to discuss that. What I can say is, at this point, we've embargoed and we're seeking to have this product destroyed. And we've also filed a motion for a temporary injunction to have this company prevented from further manufacturing and selling edible cannabinoid products.
You can't say whether or not it's criminal, it could be criminal?
I cannot, I'm not going to weigh in on the criminal side of things at this point in
Just to clarify,
time.
you said they can't produce any cannabinoids, or they can't produce cannabinoids above and beyond 500?
You can check on our filing along with our press release, but we are asking for an injunction to prevent this company from further manufacturing and selling edible cannabinoid products.
When you use the verb prosecute, you were like, not in the strict term of like a criminal prosecution?
Correct, a civil prosecution.
Michelle Griffith, Minnesota Reformer. How many other manufacturers and or retailers in this space have you investigated or are you investigating?
I'm not certain.
I guess it can just report on the number of complaints.
That's all we can
There's-
report at this
Can
point
be
in time.
multiple products within a complaint.
Okay, so a complaint doesn't mean an investigation necessarily?
If we get a complaint, we investigate, and the investigation is ongoing in those matters where we have complaints. They have not been resolved, and under the Data Practices Act, we're not at liberty to divulge the context of those investigations right now.
Was it specifically the death by gummy bears that was the product that sickened some people, or was it a number of these?
Well, this came to our attention when we received notification from the FDA about a possible death in another jurisdiction, and they identified the location as being in Moorhead with death by gummy bears, and that's when we began our investigation and where we resulted in having the embargo. Some of you may know that this was reported in October, I believe, by a Des Moines television station about the 5 high school students who were sickened from consuming death by gummy bears, and that was also the subject of an FDA investigation. Beyond that, we can't share more information with you other than what's been released by the FDA.
Question, Channel 4, Caroline Cummings. You mentioned what you want the legislature to come back and amend and update when they come back to session, but this proposal kind of flew under the radar all of session. Do you think anyone on the board that the legislature moved too quickly on this and they should have had it more in public view?
That's a political question that we are not in a position to answer. Our view is that this is, how these things come about is with the governor and the legislature, and we hope that they take a deeper dive and address some of the issues that have been uncovered. Our authority under Section 151.7.2 was limited to issuing a cease and desist letter, seeking an injunction, and our embargo authority. And so we've exercised our right to seek an injunction and to embargo the product.
Is it Dr. Williams or Mr. Williams?
It's just plain old Mr.
Are
Williams.
you a pharmacist?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm a public member of the board.
public member, okay. Well, I guess I'm, as the board president, or chairman, can you comment on the state of affairs that has been delivered to the agency that you are a leader of? I mean, I don't want to prompt, but it seems unusual that you would have to file civil suits to enforce the most basic rules and safety considerations of this law.
I disagree with that. I'm a lawyer in my private practice, and filing civil lawsuits is exactly what you do when you want to stop somebody from doing something that's illegal. So I think having civil enforcement authority by going to court is appropriate course of action.
But it's not to a pharmacist who is violating pharmacy regulations. Do you take them to civil court, or do you have the...
Well, that's the difference between being on a board where we license people and we can take enforcement and action through the licensing authority. We do not have licensing authority for these entities, so we were left with cease and desist, embargo, and civil litigation.
The point I was making, civil litigation seems a secondary and a weaker enforcement method for this type of law.
It depends, it depends. I disagree with that. I mean, sometimes you like to go to court, sometimes if you license them, you can take action more directly, but we didn't have that authority.
A lot of the licensed industries here is medical marijuana, and one of the licensees, I think, has sued.
I understand that's been dropped.
Has it been dropped?
That was, I read somewhere it was dropped, I don't know. It was scheduled for a hearing in January.
When you came with Quincy's business, I just wanted to check to see if these products, if it's confirmed that they were manufactured after the law change in July, or if they might have been manufactured before under the 2018 Farm Bill.
We do not know the answer to that question.
Can I close the loop on the 46 complaints? Is this the first one of those complaints that's led to even an embargo of product?
Yes, due to the sheer quantity and the seriousness of the products, we moved quickly to embargo. This is our first case exercising that embargo authority.
How many employees do you have with the board that are investigating this industry?
We have 23 employees, but we have, that's the entire agency. We have about 5 full-time surveyors that are responsible for conducting both inspections and investigations.
For everything,
For,
for all of your jurisdictions.
correct, for all of our licensees.
Quick follow-up on the Farm Bill.
And we're down one, waiting to replace.
Prior to the July change in law, would it have been legal for a manufacturer to produce this product with this particular milligram percentage under the 2018 US Farm Bill?
No. The Farm Bill, as I understand it, and I don't know if you want to talk to this a little more, but
I would say that this is a product that would have been allowed under the Farm Bill before Minnesota acted with the new changes and the limitations. This would have been one of the areas where individuals were seeking to find, I guess, sort of loopholes in what they could provide, in that it wasn't Delta 9, it was Delta 8. Good question.
Was it kind of like a can of worms in some ways when that thing changed? Like you had all these popping up and you talked about being down someone and trying to investigate this? It's a little overwhelming to think, I mean, you can't be everywhere. So sort of talk about, it's still out there, it's still being manufactured.
absolutely.
So, yeah,
I
can we
mean,
go up to the front? and
yeah,
talk about that?
absolutely. Again, it is, every day at our agency, it's a matter of priority, because this is certainly a public health threat, but we have the same types of issues and concerns with our licensees as well. That was the reason we exist. So we do a lot of prioritizing and taking a look at what needs the most immediate attention. And again, we work overtime, we work long hours, and we try to work quickly and effectively to make sure that the way that we're using our resources is going to be effective for us. But we use the resources that we have. I would also say, though, we do get some additional support from other agencies, our sister agencies, Department of Health and Department of Agriculture, and so I don't want to exclude them either, but
Big job.
yeah. So.
Is that about it?
Are they all Delta 8 products, or are there Delta 9 products as well?
This company manufactures both, well, they manufacture Delta 8 products primarily under the Death by Gummies. The products over here in the Wonky side as well are Delta 8. They do have Delta 9 products as well, and some of those were found to be compliant on site.
We Delta 9 by marijuana, or were they by hemp?
It was expressed as hemp.
And then the person that died, someone died, right? Did they die from taking death by gummies, or can't you make that correlation?
They were reported to have consumed death by gummies. The actual cause of the death has not been determined. It was alleged that there may have been a relationship, but I don't think the FDA has made a final determination. We have no personal knowledge of that at all. Well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate your time and attention and hope you get the word out so that we don't have accidents.
Thank